Okay, you're good.
All right. Just finding my agenda in my 500 emails that I sent today. Sorry about that. All right, general government, 701, November 17th. Anybody have anything before we jump into the agenda that they'd like to bring up? Okay. So the CRS educational program webinars, does anyone have any updates on the one that they were assigned to work on?
No updates, just wondering who you were. I know we talked at the curb. So that was Dan, and you mentioned a few other people that I should get in touch with. Dan Moan and
Yeah, you're doing the resident panel on
flood
preparing for a flood.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can ask around anyone who you think would have experience or firsthand knowledge, and then professionals, so contractors, waterproofing experts, somebody who might be able to talk about rain gardens. So yeah, you need to get your roster of people together so that you can start planning the agenda topics and then pick a date. So the first one that I'm doing, flood insurance and flood mapping, it's not going to be till the first week of December, it's looking like. So if you're in January, that's okay.
And Carolyn, we're thinking one a month.
Yeah, we're getting reassessed in April. So we would like all 4 of them to happen before then. So yeah, at this point, 1 every 6 weeks-ish.
So Kim, I'm happy to go in January or February, like beginning of each month. When you pick whatever you want, and then I'll plan for the other one.
Is there are we shooting for a certain number of panelists, or just?
I think this is more about getting it done, and in my mind, 3 feels about right. So if it's 4, I don't know.
I mean, obviously ask them what they have to say. If they only have one very specific topic to talk about and it's going to be 5 minutes, then we're going to need more. But if they have a couple things they want to talk about, I was picturing more like professional Q&A, and then at the end, the residents would just talk about personal experiences. Obviously, everybody's going to have a different firsthand experience, but we're shooting for an hour for the actual webinar. The other thing is, I think the best way to get people to come to these would be good old-fashioned flyering, going out and putting flyers in mailboxes. So do you all have availability to do that, either the weekend after Thanksgiving or the weekend? Yeah.
Sure.
The day after Thanksgiving or the next weekend? I don't know.
Yeah, you're thinking we'll do that every time, like for each one, we'll do that?
Yeah, I think that probably would get the best turnout. And also if we can tell FEMA that we put flyers in every mailbox for everyone, I feel like that says something about engagement. I don't know, maybe not. But if we can pick a date for the second one now, then we could flyer for both of them at once.
That's where I was going, right? If we want to just make it, but yeah, either way.
Yeah, so we have over 2 weeks until, if we wanted to flyer on the 5th or 6th of December. So we haven't picked a date yet. So if Matt, if you could get yours together, or Kim, if you could get yours together before then we could flyer for 2 at once.
Okay.
Okay.
Also, a little bit of an update in this arena. Wes put together a letter for new residents in the floodplain, talking about what you can and cannot do in the floodplain, how to check the NOAA website for the level of the river and when it's action level at 17 feet, etc. And so that was sent to 26 recently sold homes. It's really great. I think we can build on it though, because I feel like when I moved, I got a lot of literature and just threw it out. So if we could make it more eye-catching, because it's just like a letter on Yardley Borough letterhead right now. But I think that was another bullet point in the CRS rating system, was education specifically to new homeowners. So we're trying to improve there. All right, anything else on the CRS program? All right, comprehensive plan. So I know you've all received it at this point. Just after I dug into it a little more, it seems like it's a 10-year plan and it was voted on in 2014. So it technically has 4 more years, and I don't know if we really want to break that. Perhaps we could just do some sort of an addendum with small tweaks. I don't know that the whole thing needs to be rewritten right now. We might want to instead just focus on the financial piece, and if any of the financial pieces don't coincide with what was passed 10 years ago, we would obviously revisit that, or 6 years ago, sorry.
I'm like I've been reading through it, and I just feel like some areas they would just need like a little bit of updating. Like, for instance, we no longer have St. Andrew's Nursery School, and that's mentioned as one of the schools, or how much open space we have. That might have, did that officially increase when they decided they weren't going to use Reading Avenue for development, and possibly with the Pico lot? So, I mean, there's just like tweaking that could be done maybe. But
Yeah, and the other question that comes up with how do we make this document more accessible to council? So could that be the role of general government to come up with some sort of shorter document that every year we have it on our calendar that council, all 7 of us during a meeting, we revisit this document and make sure we're making progress, or at least referencing it when we vote on certain things, because we don't do that.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I agree completely, having looked through half of it. It's not, starting from scratch doesn't seem like efficient or necessary. I like your suggestion better than what I was thinking, which is like maybe at a 5-year interval, you got to add an addendum to it, right? Of like, halfway through, this is what we think, and then you do a new one. But maybe it is as simple as once a year, maybe different than budget season, but there's like a planning thing where general government takes another look at it, talks about proposed changes to it, and we make it, come back to council for everybody to take a look at some proposed updates or changes to it, or remind people of the key things that we're at least in theory supposed to be thinking about, planning for.
Yeah. Okay, so there are 13 chapters and 3 of us. Do we want to break it into 3 parts and go through and just look for anything that has become completely outdated or null and void? So the first 4 are introduction, goals and objectives, population and housing, and land use and development activity. Does that speak to anyone?
As I've been reading through it, just like sticking comments in the margin, like, does this need to be updated? Are these numbers right? So, I don't care if I have to finish going through the whole thing, but I guess other people should look at it too.
Yeah, if you want to do first pass comments, and then we can break it up for the more in-depth. Paula, can you take a look too? Even if you can just give us contacts for each section, like who should we talk to? I know Parks and Rec has started to talk a little bit about land use, so we might triage with them.
And then there's the sewer part, because what's going on with it?
Yeah, so we would probably want to ask the sewer authority to unofficially weigh in on whether that still looks accurate. To me, it didn't look accurate anymore, but your guess is as good as mine in that area. Okay, so timeline, we're coming up on the end of the year. I know you wanted to kick off the financial plan January. So I guess we'll just be in touch via email and try to keep making progress on going through this. So I don't think it makes sense to necessarily start the financial one until we've got a handle on the comprehensive plan. Any other thoughts on that?
Carolyn, how do we think about, I guess in my mind, it totally makes sense now reading this, that it is 2 different plans, right? I didn't really conceptually think about that before I started reading this. So the comprehensive plan is what it is. We go through it, we read it. To Kim's point, we see what's outdated, make suggestions and tweaks to it or an addendum. The financial plan, that's separate, I think, and that's related to this, almost as an addendum to it, or is that just an entirely separate project? How are you thinking about that?
I think if we could marry them, that would be great, but yeah, we could go very simple with the financial plan and it could just be like a 5-year savings plan and a 5-year spending plan. Like we could do that like 1 page each, or we could go more in depth and take each section of the comprehensive plan and spell out how we're going to pay for it or how we're going to save for it.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
I think we probably should get, some resident feedback on this as well. I feel like sometimes we do these things in a bubble, so I don't know at what point we want to involve like a small resident committee to help us with this, but so the budget resident advisory committee, I think you mentioned that recently, Matt. Like they did a really good job. I think just fresh eyes on everything. Yep. So maybe forming something like that again to help us with the financial plan, and I think having them on board early on would be helpful.
Yep. Okay.
Anything else on the comprehensive plan or financial plan? Okay, and then the budget. So we've 2 weeks out from the voting on the preliminary. We've started to have some resident feedback, so I thought we could just take that one by one. First would be the annex budget considerations. So Matt, John, and I did another tour of the annex, talked about that a little bit. How much is in the budget for the annex, Paula, this coming year?
I believe it's 15,000.
So initially we had budgeted 40 there, but 15 seems like enough to do the roof and then some other small fix up, so we could potentially utilize the space beyond the car bays. So I think that makes sense to keep that in, given the tour that just happened, and it's really a useful space for the police. The Reading Ave budget. We know how much we charged for hauling for their recent cleanup, Paula?
No, I don't think that was in Ken's bills, but let me double check on that. Because Reading Avenue, I don't think they even submitted anything for the budget. So we need to put some monies into that.
Paula, when you say Reading Avenue, I'm familiar with the lot, but what does that mean? Like, is that like a separate entity that has expenses and then bills, or how does that work?
It's the Reading Avenue Woods, they call it now. So that is that parcel that they were going to sell a couple years ago. That's along the railroad tracks, right up to that house that's right there.
Right, but what's this, like, who would be submitting a bill? Like, who, I'm trying to understand, like, who would be.
Oh, well, they did a cleanup a couple Saturdays ago, and I think they had mostly volunteers, but then Ken just picked up a pile of debris, and I think he just did that in the last couple of days. So he's the only one that there would have been a bill for.
Yeah,
Okay.
Matt, we have the Reading Ave, Friends of Reading Ave committee. That's a committee that was formed by Brian Marshall, I believe. I don't know at this point. So it's 5 residents and they submit a budget and it falls under the Parks and Rec umbrella, but it's a separate line item. So I believe they asked for 10,000 this year and they hadn't spent any. And we cut that by 10% back in May when we were doing rollbacks. And I think that we told them maybe like 1,500 for waste haul away, but they're not going to come anywhere near that, the size of the waste piles that they had. So I'm just pulling out items that I think are kind of in play here for cost savings. I know that the committee had very much wanted to roll that line item next year, but I guess they hadn't articulated that to you, Paula.
No.
2,500 of those are private donations from
Mr. Vitalis.
John Vitalis. So that obviously is going to remain.
Right. So do we want to add some to that?
Well, I would follow up with them because that's a significant amount of money if they're going to request 10,000 again. And I think we would need to know what they plan to do with that, whether they want to use that for grant match or for cleanup. Because if they're just going
Okay.
to do more cleanups, then that seems like way too much money.
Oh, absolutely.
Did they have someone look at the trees and see which ones are ones they want to keep and which ones, did they have someone do that?
Yes. Yeah, we did that a couple of weeks ago. They walked through. They actually, have you been by there? You guys should go by. I was really amazed how much they did. There's a huge difference from when we were there a couple of weeks ago, Caroline.
Yeah, it looks really good. They took out
Mhm.
all the vines and then what their plan is the trees that they do take down, they're going to chip them up to create a pathway along the road instead of, doing a sidewalk or any sort of formal paving. They're just going to use wood chips from trees that they cut down to make a safe walkway for people coming in from that part of town or from under the railroad bridge, wherever they're coming from.
Mhm.
And it just to be clear, it runs from the end of the SEPTA lot to the house that was built. That's the boundaries of it. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. And then the last thing I had down that seemed like it is moving a little bit was the real estate tax item. Paul, you want to give an update on that? I know you sent an email.
Right. I reached out to Chris Harding and I asked him his feel on it, and he talked to some of his associates in his office. And they do feel that the market is going to remain pretty strong. So he's recommending that we do up that line item as well. We met with a resident on Friday who had some concerns over that line item. And after doing some research, I feel confident upping it. I don't know if I do 15,000 additional, but I think maybe at least 10.
One thing
I
I
would-
was thinking, Paula, separate from whether we adjust or not, which it sounds like we want to.
Mhm.
I think it might be for items like this, right? That are not, they're sort of recurring, but not exactly, you don't know the volume, right? So there's uncertainty about how much, right? And I think
Right.
the philosophy this year was let's be conservative because one, we're in a pandemic, right? And two, we're trying to budget in a year we have a deficit, so we can't miss again and have another deficit, right? So,
Correct.
but it would be helpful, I think, as we roll this forward, what's the 5-year moving average, right? Like if we said, look, this is how much we got, and I do think we need to exclude Yardley Walk from that
Right.
because that was kind of a one-off thing, right? But if we had for items like this, for items like moving violations and items like, building permits and those types of things, if we kept a rolling 5-year average, maybe that's the starting point, and then we justify any tweak from there.
Okay.
Based on market environment. Because I think right now the starting point is a judgment call, right? Which then opens you up to more questions around, well, okay, how'd you get to that starting point?
Sure.
I think if we had a starting point or a philosophy around the starting point, which was here's the 5-year average excluding unusual things, and then we made an adjustment based on the market based on that. That's just an idea. We have to pull the data, but I'm sure we have it.
Absolutely. I can get that to you tomorrow.
Okay, no rush, but thank you.
Yeah, I think that's good because we used to just roll forward the previous year, and that's definitely an imperfect system. So we increased that item, and I think that the real estate tax income, and I think the goal should be December 1st council meeting, we have updated year-to-dates so that 2 weeks prior to the final budget vote, we can take a look at how we're looking and our updated projections for income next year and reassess as needed the millage.
Okay.
That's all I have officially on the agenda. Anyone have any additions to the agenda? Any questions or comments from our audience?
Just out of curiosity, I was speaking with a realtor today, and as of this moment right now, that realtor had told me that there's not a single home in Yardley Borough that's up for sale. As of today, the ones that were up are either pending or contingent.
That sounds good for this year's budget, but not a good pipeline for next year's.
low inventory. Even the one on River Road?
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's good news for us.
It's contingent on a sale, so hopefully, we'll see.
Great.
Yeah, everyone wants to live here. I don't blame them.
That's right.
All right, folks, anything else before we adjourn?
No, thank you.
All right, see y'all in 10
All right.
minutes.
All righty.
Bye, guys.
Bye.